and welcome to today's episode of the Hospitable Hosts podcast. Today I am speaking with co-founder and CEO of PetScreening. PetScreening has been nationally recognized 3 years in a row as one of the fastest growing privately owned companies in the United States. And as I say, their founder and CEO, John Bradford, is here today to speak with me. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Okay, hello, John. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Miles. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Okay, John. So to get started, I've already read out your kind of introduction in the start of the episode, but maybe you can tell us a bit more about yourself. Introduce yourself and PetScreening.
Yeah, well, first, thanks again for having me. So my name is John Bradford. I'm the founder and CEO of PetScreening. First, I'll just tell you I'm a professional property manager, so I've managed properties, long-term rentals, and I've even had my own vacation rentals. I'm a pet owner. And so, I kind of understand both sides of the relationship. And of course, at one point in my life, I was also a renter, right? I was a tenant. So I've lived all the different roles. And so PetScreening is a company I started 9 years ago, and we just help navigate the challenges of pets and assistance animals, right? There are people who say they have service animals, emotional support animals, and there are people that need those animals, but there's also bad actors who maybe are trying to get around pet policies. Maybe it's a no pet policy or a breed restriction. And so I started PetScreening just to help landlords and property managers of both long-term rentals and now short-term rentals, which is something new for us this year, to help owners navigate that. And it's been a lot of fun.
Nice. And you say you're a pet owner, dogs, cats, lizards, fish?
Yeah, so I do. Yeah, so I have two dogs. We did have a cat. We had a cat named Bob, and he was 15, and he passed away about 3 months ago. So we're down to two dogs. And I know before we got started, you told me that you have a dog, and and what's interesting is here in the U.S., 70% of American households have pets. 70%, pretty high number.
Wow.
And it's not just one pet; it's actually an average of 1.6 pets. So like I'm an example, I'm a two pet household at the moment. You're a one pet. So just between the two of us, that's 1.5 pet average. And so pets are everywhere. And people want to, I think, try to be with their pets as much as possible. That's reasonable. And so, it's really neat to have a product to help people take their pets where they can, but also make sure they understand the rules. Because that's what's important, is that they understand there's a set of rules, right? And that's really what our platform is all set out to do.
Nice, yeah. And what kind of point in the industry made you go, like, we need to create PetScreening? Like, there's an issue here, and we have to go and do this kind of thing.
Yeah. So while I was a property manager, I had my own management company. So I managed about 3,000 long-term rentals. Managed my own vacation rentals. I did that on my own. But for others, third-party management, I was doing that. And while doing that, I started had a political career. So I was serving in the North Carolina House of Representatives, and I was in that role for 4 elected terms, 8 years, spread across a 10-year time period. And while I was serving, I carried a majority of my state. I live in North Carolina, our tenant landlord law. And so I really understand fair housing. I really understand tenant rights, resident rights, guest rights for transient occupants. But I also understand landlord rights. And I'm a big landlord rights guy. In fact, for vacation rentals, in my state, there was lots of attempts to put moratoriums on vacation rentals in some of our urban cities. And I constantly fought against that. Because I believe that if you own a property, as long as you're willing to follow the rules of your HOA or condo association, then you should be able to rent it out. And so we're seeing some different markets, I think, attack that. And so in North Carolina, I played a role to make sure that we kept that at bay. And so through that, I saw an opportunity to create a platform to help landlords better manage pets and then assistance animals. No one wants to challenge someone who says they have a disability because they're afraid they're getting in trouble. But there are a lot of bad actors who are saying they have an assistance animal when they really don't. There are people, Miles. I mean, there are people who absolutely need a legitimate service animal, period. They're not the problem. It's the bad actors who are just slapping a vest on their dog they got off of Amazon or buying a certificate off the internet so that they don't have to pay pet fees. And that's wrong. And so I wanted a platform to help manage that. And that's how the idea came to bear. And that was 9 years ago. And we've grown as they say in show business, we've come a long way, baby.
Nice, I love it. So obviously that's kind of the issue that you're solving. Maybe you can talk us through, for someone that hasn't used PetScreening before, completely new to it, like how are you solving that issue? Like maybe you can just talk through the step by step a bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, hospitable being a PMS and the short-term vacation rentals. I'll talk about that. So,
Hmm.
short-term vacation rentals fall under the ADA, which means they're governed by the ADA as it relates to service animals. One, I'd say there's some confusion. I've met short-term vacation rental owners that allow emotional support animals (ESAs), but by law, short of a state law, which may make you take an ESA, but honestly, I can't think of any state laws at the moment that require that of vacation rentals, at least when it's a true short term. I know of companies that were allowing ESAs when really they didn't have to. And so just knowing the
Mm.
law is really, really important. In our platform, we understand the law and we help navigate that. But also, look, pets are a fabric of the American DNA. People want to bring their dogs. They're
Yep.
paying $75 to $80 a night to board their pets. So if they're going to go on vacation, they're going to pay 75 or $80 on average to board it. There's a real opportunity for hosts to open up their properties to pets and maybe not collect the $80 a night, but most certainly collect $50 a night. And that, of course, revenue falls right to a property manager's bottom line in this industry, at least. And so just having a platform to be able to manage those policies and make sure those guests who are bringing their dog that they know the rules. They must be leashed. You must pick up its poop. They must be vaccinated. There should be no biting history. And getting those
Mm.
folks on the record shows responsible pet ownership and it adds a lot of revenue. And if you say no or don't allow pets, they might try and say it's a service animal and you have to take it anyway. And therefore, you don't get to collect any revenue.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, I definitely factor in my dog whenever I'm traveling. Like,
Sure.
if I'm flying away somewhere, it's factored in. Like, are we going to afford the cost of this trip essentially? Because we
Yeah.
have to pay for her to go away somewhere. And then if it's driving distance, then we're thinking about, well, we want to bring the dog with us. So where can we go where the dog's going to be allowed as well? Yeah.
Well, and Miles, here in the U.S., it's hard to find a hotel nowadays that
Yeah.
is not pet friendly.
Mm.
And I just did a vacation webinar for a Las Vegas association, and
Yeah.
their a number of rentals reservations are down, and so they're looking for creative ways to drive more revenue. And if you go to the big listing services, the VRBOs and Airbnb, there's some data out there that shows that the pet friendly listings are clicked on 3 times as much. So there's 3 times as many people searching for pet friendly rentals. And if those people, are looking for a place and they're willing to pay, $50 a night because they're going to pay 75 if they board it, and your reservations are down, this may really, our platform gives you the confidence to be able to better manage this, but it also opens up that new lane of possible revenue and possible
Yeah.
bookings, which means you also get the revenue for the booking itself, which is important too. It's not sitting there vacant.
Yeah, of course. And you talked about a few misconceptions there, I guess. But what do you think is the biggest misconception hosts have about allowing pets in short-term rental?
I think they all go, well, pets, there's two really. Pets create damage. Well, I
Mm.
mean, yes, it can happen, but so can the person and their family. They can damage the
Yeah.
unit, right? I mean, humans are equally as guilty as damaging a unit as pets. The way I look at it is someone, and I'm speaking from experience. I had a beach house, rented it for a couple $1,000s a week. Someone who's paying a few $1,000s a week is probably not going to be the type of pet owner who's going to let their pet run rampant and do a bunch of damage. And if they do, by the way, the law provides a vehicle for you to go get those damages back. Even if it's a service animal, they're not exempt from damage and being sued. Now, I know that's a pain to do, but the reality is there is a mechanism to go get that. But typically, someone who's paying several $1,000s, these dogs are living like royalty. I mean, they really are. They're part of the family. They're part of that family's family. And so for them to bring their dog, they want to bring it and they're willing to pay. So I think a big misconception is pet damage. And I think if you do it long enough, you're going to have some dog somewhere have some damage, but you have that already with humans. The thing is, do you have it happen less than more? And I can assure you that you'll have more positive experience with pets and newfound revenue than you won't. The other misconception I would say, and really maybe a misunderstanding, is the fact that a lot of vacation hosts will do like very short term during summers, but in the winter, they'll do a more of a longer term stay. Well, a lot of states, if you cross 28 days or 30 days,
Mm.
you flip out of ADA to now fair housing. And you do have to take an emotional support animal in those situations. And so, for someone that might have a no pet policy or a dog only policy, you could find yourself with an emotional support cat if you're following the law. And the good news is pet screening, we know the law, so we're going to make sure it's legitimate. But I think a lot of hosts are unknowingly violating the law because they still don't allow ESAs, even though they might cross over into the fair housing trigger because of the length of occupancy. And so I like to say our platform, kind of saves you from yourself, just not knowing. And that's what we're really good at.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I know there's obviously always complications with like tax and things like that with
Mm-hmm.
MTRs, but I hadn't thought of it from a pet perspective, and I bet a lot of other hosts haven't as well.
Yes, for
So,
sure.
and so from your experience, I'm sure you've kind of got lots of data on the bookings with or without pets, and you were talking about Airbnb having that data as well. Um, how much additional revenue can hosts expect to generate by becoming pet friendly?
I mean, it's because our experience as hosts are able to keep this revenue for themselves.
Mm.
Typically they get a percentage of the actual booking, right? So the actual revenue that's taken in for the actual management company, we're talking 30, 40, sometimes 50% additional revenue because the difference is you're not taking a percentage of the pet non-refundable fee. You're actually able to keep the whole thing. And that's, and I know that's an individual policy thing that every property management company makes, but largely the industry seems to just keep those because they're going to have, they can explain to their hosts or to the owners of those properties that, they're going to have to do a little extra cleaning and they're taking on the liability. And while all those things are true, it is really an opportunity for them to be able to make more revenue and keep it. So we're talking 30, 40, 50% more revenue per booking. It's really amazing and it adds up very quickly. And it's just a huge untapped opportunity, especially when only about 28% of vacation rentals in general are pet friendly, not hotels. Hotels, it's largely a majority
Mm.
now. But in this space, it's just less 30%. But I think what's going to happen is more and more are going to start becoming pet friendly. Because Miles, I will tell you, and I've heard this a few times and I listen and then I sort of give my 2 cents on it. Someone will say, well, I don't want dander. I don't want dog dander. So I'm going to be a no pet property. You can never guarantee that your property isn't going to have dog dander because you could have a no pet property and you still have to allow a service animal by law. And as soon as you allow one service animal, guess what? You have dander. So there is no such thing as a pet free room anymore. At a hotel, there's no such thing as a pet free room because it may have had a dog because of a service animal. So if you're going to have this anyway, why not create revenue and just have a way to properly manage it? And that's the whole premise of what PetScreening has been doing for the last 9 years. In fact, Miles, in the long-term space, so think more traditional rentals, 1 out of every 7 rentals in the country is on the PetScreening platform. 1 out of every 7, that's a huge number. So now in vacation rentals, it's a new market for us. We know that people want to take their pets, and we're here to make it easier for them to do that, but also following the rules. And that's the whole point of what we do.
Nice, okay. And I can totally attest to having dander everywhere because my dog's a corgi and she sheds like crazy. So she comes
Yes.
with me everywhere I go, whether I actually bring her or not. Cool. So just thinking, you obviously talked about kind of service animals and emotional support animals. What is the requirement for hosts there and kind of like what do they need to understand about how they can properly, handle assisting service animals and what their
Sure.
requirements are there?
Well, you have to have a firm understanding of the ADA rules for short-term vacation rentals, and then you have to know fair housing rules for those instances when you may
Mm.
flip over to fair housing. Now you're getting into
Yeah.
length of stay. Like in North Carolina, I know because I passed the law, if you stay 91 days in a property, you flip over into what we call our normal landlord tenancy. Therefore, Fair Housing Act triggers. But if you're 90 days or less, then it would be ADA service animals only. So you have to kind of know your states or your jurisdictional guidelines, and even counties within states, those can change. So knowing that's important. Two, knowing what you can and cannot ask. I can assure you, and I can say this very confidently, most people don't want to know it enough because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble. They don't want to get accused
Yeah.
of being discriminatory. And pet screening, we are not punitive. Like we want to help everyone who legitimately has a service animal or emotional support animal, but we also want to stop those bad actors. And we have lawyers here. In fact, people that use our service, we're so confident about it that we guarantee our service. So if you use pet screening and there becomes like a regulatory issue or a lawsuit, we cover any settlement costs and legal fees because we've done millions of these and we've never been found of doing any wrongdoing ever. That's how confident we are. So, some small management company managing 10 vacation rentals, they probably don't want to have to keep up with this. And so using a platform or having a platform to help them is going to be very powerful.
Nice. Okay. And so, you kind of talked there about, I guess, lawsuits. What is the risk of, saying no to someone when you should be saying yes, kind of thing, when it's a
Yeah,
service animal and you've said no? Like, could potentially happen if you
yeah.
handle
I
that
mean,
wrong?
well, first of all, you're talking about federal lawsuit because it's a
Mm,
discrimination class at the federal level. So first of all, you instantly go to federal court. So you're not going to like small claims court where you can represent yourself. So federal court, anything with an F in front of it, it gets very expensive. So federal court, and then if you are in fact found guilty of discriminating against someone because you just said no, and you should have said yes, or at least done some review process, the fines could be $30,000. I mean, I don't know. I just know the average fines are
yeah.
25, 30,000. I mean, there's some egregious cases where they're even more. It's really if the courts dig into, well, is this a precedent? Have you done this before? And you show a trend of doing it. Well, then it
Mm,
could be a class action suit. So, and I don't want to fear monger. That's not my style. I just think getting ahead of this and making sure you using a trusted platform to help manage this is really, really important. And because we're so confident in what we do, we're going to politely be able to tell those people that might have an emotional support animal legitimately for their long-term stay that want to bring it to a vacation rental. We're going to tell them, no, you can't because it doesn't qualify. It's a pet. Because in short-term vacations, it's a pet, not an ESA. Whereas a property manager not using pet screening might just say, well, okay, you can bring it, because they don't understand or know that an ESA doesn't really hunt if it's a true short-term rental. But our platform, we know that. And so we'll help define it. And it's just, it's really, I mean, it's just quite amazing, especially with turnover, right? Turnover is high in property management. So you're constantly getting new employees and new property managers, trying to constantly train them. So you might as well have like a steady, consistent platform, which is why we're on the scene now.
nice. I love it. So thinking about, your perspective from being a legislator, what are some of the maybe upcoming regulatory trends that you're seeing that short-term rental hosts should keep an eye on? Are we going to see more regulation around, pets, service animals, and guest screening in general, potentially?
Well, the ADA is the ADA is obviously a federal act, and so I
Yeah.
don't think that act is necessarily going to change. But what I think you could see is different states reevaluating what represents transient and guest occupancy versus long-term
Mm,
occupancy. I know because my state went through this last year, 2024, and I'm the author of the bill that fixed it. And I know there's variations already. So I think just knowing your legislature and what they're looking at, knowing what Congress may be doing, but even municipalities pass ordinances, so knowing your ordinances. I also think, there's been, as of late, I would say in the last year or this year 25, I think some of this has been tampered down with the Trump administration. But before that, we were seeing a true attack on property rights. Markets coming out saying we don't want any vacation rentals whatsoever. We've seen that in New York and some other places. And obviously that infringes on someone's ability to take an investment asset and actually turn it into a money-making vehicle. And so I think you just kind of watch some of those things, and some urban markets may continue to do that. So I mean, knowledge is power. So just pay attention to it and don't get caught flat-footed.
nice. Okay. And taking your experience as property manager, a pet owner, if you were starting a new short-term rental next week, and you want to make it very pet friendly, what are some of the things that you'd be thinking about doing?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, one, and this will sound self-serving, and I don't want it to. I started pet screening because I am a property manager, and I started it
Mm,
for property managers. So I can honestly say, like, put a platform like us in place so that you can truly make sure your guests with pets or with assistance animals understand the rules. And I do want to highlight, we even have the capability to take your guests that are not bringing their pets. They might be a pet owner, Miles, but they're leaving their pet behind, which is great. But even
mm,
those guests, we have a way for them to go through our platform to acknowledge that they're not bringing their pet, but they also won't have a visitor. Like maybe they're vacationing in a market where their best friend lives, and that's why they're going. And their
yeah.
best friend wants to bring that dog over to a cookout in cornhole, but now that dog comes over and bites somebody. So we actually have a way to make sure that guests who are coming without pets go through a quick set of rules to understand that that means no visiting pets while I'm staying here. So we truly can help all guests, people, no pets, who are not bringing their pets, guests with pets, etc. So I would make sure you have a platform in place. And then I would even go as far as for those reservations that are going to be pets, like maybe spend $5 and give a dog treat, or kind of make it feel like you're welcoming their pet as much as you're welcoming the guest, because that experience is going to lead to a really good reputation Google review or some sort of reputation management system score, and they could be a repeat stay. And one thing I have heard from some of our clients and people that I've interviewed is when people find a pet friendly vacation rental in a market they love to vacation in, they'll keep going back, and then they may do a direct booking, which could perhaps save booking fees. So anyway, those are just some of the things that I thought about and have heard of.
Nice. Okay. Awesome. So kind of getting towards the end here, but just in case anyone's kind of faded away, not paying attention, we're going to do a little bit of a more of a quick fire, just a few questions to kind of wrap up. So in one sentence, what is pet screening and why should every host use it?
Yeah, we're a pet policy and assistance animal management platform that will help you not only better manage your risk, it'll help you generate more revenue, and we're going to stop a lot of those fake service animals.
Awesome. And then again, in one sentence, what should a host never say or do when a guest claims they have an assistance animal?
You should never, ever ask what is their disability. It's none of your business. You should never ask what is their disability.
Awesome. Okay. And then what's one simple habit that makes hosts dramatically more protected from pet damage?
Well, I think making sure that your guests understand that you're looking for accountable and responsible pet owners, pet parents, and by making them go through a platform to acknowledge your policies as the actual management company, which may include vaccinations, understanding a bite history, sets the right tone so that they know that you're only going to welcome people who are pet responsible, and that sets the right tone before the relationship even starts.
Cool. Very good. And then final quick one. What's the biggest opportunity in the short-term rental industry right now, pet related or otherwise?
I mean, look, revenue, and because there's 3 times as much demand for pet-friendly rentals, those hosts that are forward-thinking and start allowing more pets, they'll see their reservations go up, they'll see their bottom line income go up, and then they'll say, why didn't I do this sooner?
Perfect. Okay, John, one very easy final question. Where can hosts go to learn more about pet screening?
Yeah, very easy. It's PetScreening.com, and then you'll click on industries, and you'll see the vacation rental industry, because we're also in the long-term industry. You'll go to vacation industries, and it'll take you right to where you need to be. And I'm John at PetScreening.com, John. I'm very easy to track down, John at PetScreening.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much, John. Been a pleasure speaking with you.
Had a great time. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you for listening to today's episode with Pet Screening. If you enjoyed the episode, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and listen out for a new episode of the Hospitable Hosts podcast dropping soon.